You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Happy New Year!
Welcome to 2021, everyone. You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
We're the Good Evening Girls, and this is your favorably weekly Podword Crosscast.
Whoa. We made it to 2021 collectively as this podcast group, cohort, family.
We did. We survived. I thought it would be like a Y2K situation where our mics just wouldn't work in the new year, but...
Well, here's to hoping to 2022. Am I right, ladies?
Fingers crossed. Okay, well, instead of doing our regular weekly heights and shites like we normally do, we're doing something a little bit different.
Ooh, okay. What are we doing?
You know exactly what we're doing. We're going to do a top 10 list of our favorite crossword things that happened in 2020.
Think of this as like a 2020 year in review for crosswords. And not just crosswords, the cross world. Because yes, folks, there's a cross world out there. And you're part of it if you're listening to this crossword podcast.
Whether you want to be or not. All right, so I'll start.
All right.
Number 10, cats becoming part of crossword canon.
And we're not talking just, the friendly feline friends that you have in your home or in your back alley. We're talking about Cats, the musical. Both Broadway and movie.
Rumpelteazer, Mr. Mistopheles,
X, Y,
all
and
those
Z.
people.
Yes. Rum Tum Tugger. All of them are your friendly neighborhood Cats characters. I loved that for 2020. That was great. Number 9, Twitter polls. Grace and I have discovered Twitter polls this year. We ran a lot of them. We're talking about your favorite Addams Family characters, your favorite famous dog actors. That got a little heated on Twitter, but we loved it.
Yeah, and we should do more of that.
We should do more of that.
We should do like one for every episode. We just have to think of like something controversial that people can vote on.
We love hearing your opinions about things.
We do. All right, now number 8 was the Waypo Sunday puzzles by Evan Bernholz. I don't know if he started this in 2020, but I started doing them in 2020, and it's been one of my favorite weekend puzzles.
Yes,
because it's big but fun and like challenging.
Are so good, right?
Yeah.
And they're so different. Every week something new and constantly being surprised. I think Evan started them 5 years ago. Maybe I read that on Twitter, but let us know.
We're late to the game, okay?
We're late. We're really late. Welcome to the late game with Chelsea and Grace. Ahaha. Oh, right. I'm Chelsea, by the way.
I'm Grace. You should know that by now.
You should know. Okay, so that was number 8. Number 7. The USA Today crosswords brought us from, arcane trivia to the 21st century. So thank you to the USA Today crossword for kind of fast forwarding us through space and time to bring us to contemporary times. And then, of course, we have Sally Holscher's. She has a really cool USA Today blog where she reviews the crosswords and then writes about them, and it's great. It's similar to the Rex Parker blog, but this is USA Today, and so the puzzles are just better all around.
Yes, and she does, she's on the Cats train, so she does keep track of how many times Cats is referenced. So thank you, Sally. You are doing God's work, honestly.
It's true.
All right, number 6 was using partner mode to do the New Yorker puzzles separately but together. So Chelsea and I used to always do the puzzles together at work. Obviously, we've been working remotely since March, so we haven't been able to do that. And we started using the partner mode on newyorker.com, which allows you to do a crossword with someone else.
It's really great. And we could Zoom, and it felt like we were sitting at the lunch table together.
It really did. Except no paninis. Or people screaming at us.
Right, or Grace slapping my hand when I wrote sloppily into the crossword.
True. It's all typing, so it takes away that whole element entirely.
Grace, I think number 5 is for you. This is like one of your big moments.
Oh, yeah.
2020. You want to tell us what it is?
Sure. It wasn't okay, relax. You're building it up too much. But I did take a virtual crossword constructing class with Ross Trudeau. And it was really interesting too. Not that I've constructed a crossword, but it was just interesting to see like what, really goes on behind the scenes and what goes into making a crossword, and kind of helped me, I think, be a little less harsh on crossword fill that used to bother me. Now I understand it's a necessary evil if you have a really good theme. But yeah, it was cool, and I think he's done others.
Yeah, I feel like next time we see that he has a class coming up, we'll retweet it. So if you're following us on Twitter, hopefully we will see another one of these in 2021. Mm-hmm. Ross, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
No pressure. Number 4. This is a good one. The Crossword Mystery Series on Hallmark. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Crossword Mystery Movie Series on Hallmark. The third and final installment came out in January 2020. I think there's 3 total. And it follows there's a woman crossword editor. And she helps solve crimes, basically, with the crossword.
Yeah, it all has to do with the crossword. It's so convoluted and hard to explain. But Will Shortz was like a producer in it, and he makes cameos in them. And I think in the second one, he's even ballroom dancing in a movie. So
yeah, he also played ping pong, which is apparently a thing he likes to do. So
yeah, if you're in deep into crossword world, you would enjoy that. And it's also starring Lacey Chabert from Mean Girls, and also she's in like every Hallmark movie.
It's true. It's good. That was a good one.
Okay, number 3 was lurking the virtual Lollapuzzoola this year and realizing how smart everyone is and how good at crosswords everyone is.
Everyone is so talented. It's actually kind of intimidating. Grace and I had no idea what we were getting into when we started this podcast. I'm glad we started the podcast, but we've learned so much from releasing episode 1 to now.
Yes.
And Lollapuzzoola was one of those moments where we're like, we knew everybody was like really smart, but to see it actually happening like live on screen, you're just kind of blown out of the water.
Yeah. All I know is that I know nothing. And some people say that's only smart people know that. So I'm just going to take that with me. Yeah.
Don't fight it. Just accept it. So that brings us to point number 2, the penultimate point on our top 10 list.
Nice vocab.
Thank you. I learned that from the series of unfortunate events.
The penultimate peril?
Yes. Thank you, Lemony Snicket. Point number 2. There was an article in Time called The Crossword Revolution is Upon Us by Katie Steinmetz, and it was featuring Eric Agard. And it was a really interesting look and a critical look at the Eurocentrism of the New York Times crossword puzzles. Eric Agard, if you don't know, is one of the editors at the USA Today puzzle, which is one of the puzzles we really love. We're much more critical of the New York Times puzzle for very obvious and glaring reasons if you listen to any of our episodes on this podcast. If you have time, look up that article. Definitely read it. And it gives you some really cool insight into the cross world at large. And we also love Eric, so it was cool to see him in that article.
Yes. And then finally, number 1 is getting messages from our listeners, either just to like say hi or tell us that we did something wrong or like give us, honestly, feel free to correct us. We are totally open to that. We appreciate that a lot. And then sometimes people just call in to give us new information on our topic. If you don't remember our last episode, I did competitive eating and I talked about Takeru Kobayashi, who was the competitor from Japan who like came in and just changed the game for competitive eating. But then he got banned because he wouldn't sign a contract with the Major League Eating. And it was just a whole mess. But I was worried that, he wasn't competing anymore and I didn't know what he was up to. I was hoping that he was okay and he was able to like secure the bag doing sponsorships. And we had a listener message us say he lives in Kyoto, and he's run into him before at like a hotel restaurant. He said that his partner manages a very trendy new hotel here and I met them at the hotel's restaurant. And then he actually met him twice after initially telling us he had met him before, saying that he was doing well, and he got the scoop. So he's been competing off and on for the last few years, but with COVID and everything, he might take the opportunity to retire. And he also has a hot dog-shaped handbag and a hot dog-shaped phone case, and he looks very happy in the picture that they sent us. We tweeted about it, but yeah, we love that, and I can rest easy knowing that, everything turned out okay for him.
That was probably the best way to close out 2020, to be honest with you, to know that Kobayashi is doing well.
Yes.
Out there with hot dog themed accessories.
Yeah. I expect nothing less from him. But yeah, so we love when you guys message us to say hi.
And again,
we don't bite.
we just love hearing from you. We love hearing when we do something wrong. We love hearing your thoughts about our topic. So keep it up. You never know. We might give you a shout out on our podcast. No promises, but maybe.
All right. So should we get into our next section where we wanted to talk about our favorite topics that we did this past year?
Ooh, we should. First and foremost, everyone, we released 40 episodes this year. 40, or in 2020, 40 episodes. That means we covered 80 topics. That's crazy.
And I only remember a good 5. No, just kidding.
No, right. Yeah. Like I can't even remember what I did last week. Do you want to start? What was your favorite topic?
Well, okay. I could not pick just one.
I know.
don't know.
Neither could I.
So instead I have like the 3 that I think about the most and that I bring up the most in my day-to-day conversation and be like, oh, well, I did a topic on this, so I know about it. So they are episode 42, Mythical Hybrid Space Monkeys, where I talked about Enos and other animals that have been sent into space. 44, 3 Strikes and You're Shunned, where I talked about the Amish and how they're low-key a cult, but everyone seems to love them. And then 67, Tradition, Flip It and Reverse It, where I talk about pagan traditions that Christmas time has adopted. And then my favorite topic to research was 60, Tower of Lies, about the moon landing, because I love The Shining and the moon landing and the conspiracy surrounding it. Again, I'm not saying I totally believe in the conspiracy, but that was my favorite to research.
I hope that this is kind of inspiring some listeners who may not have listened to all of our episodes to go back and re-listen, because those are some really good episodes. A couple of them almost made my list. And in fact, my favorite topic overall from 2020 was episode 60, Grace's topic on the moon landing and the conspiracy. Like, I think about how much that topic hit me maybe once a week. It was so good. So that makes my number 1 topic of the year. But it's
Wait, okay, hold on. Before I sound like a jerk, I actually picked 3 favorite topics that you did. I thought we were only doing our own. So I have, but maybe
okay.
I'll wait for you to go first and see if there's any overlap.
Okay, cool. My second favorite topic was when I talked about the Loch Ness Monster. I learned so much about the Loch Ness Monster, and also like the whole story about how like it was faked and stuff is so interesting to me.
The gynecologist.
Exactly. I don't know why there's a gynecologist involved, but there is. Go back and listen, everybody. And then I also really liked doing Monopoly, because again, I was shocked when I didn't think I was going to get anything too, groundbreaking when I researched Monopoly. And then I found out that Monopoly, the most capitalist game that there is actually invented to teach people about anti-capitalism. And so I was shocked. So good stuff there.
Shocked and appalled. I did like that one of yours as well. But my favorite topics that you did, my 3 favorite were 57, Glowy Things and Bisexual Kings, where you talked about the legend of Mulan, the real legend, not the movie. And then 47, Good Energy and Good Boys, where you talk about presidential pets. For some reason, I think about that one all the time, like the alligator in the bathtub. And then 56, Blue-Eyed Monster, the Loch Ness Monster. That was probably one of my favorites. You did.
It's funny you should say presidential pets, because that was my favorite topic to research from 2020. It was just wild. And sometimes I like to do like, heavier topics, and sometimes I like to do fluffier topics. And that was one of the fluffier ones, but I had so much fun researching it. I also really liked researching when I did Jordans, like Air Force Ones. That was episode 40, where we learn about like how, Jordans kind of took off, and then it created basically this whole sneakerhead phenomenon. I was shocked. That was a good research one. And then I really liked researching about debutantes, because I like the time period, but it's also so crazy that debutantes, which started, hundreds of years ago, is still a thing that's happening today with similar practices as what was happening hundreds of years ago. And that's episode 65. So.
Well, I'm just going to go back and listen to those all as I fall asleep like I normally do.
Yes, same. Very good. Very good.
Do you want to talk about what we're maybe looking forward to in 2021? Crossword-wise, not personal life-wise. That's a different podcast.
It's a different podcast. Yes, no. We have a couple things that we are looking forward to, and, things that we're hoping will change in 2021. I kind of broke this in a less of and more of category, so we're going to start with the less of. And I only have 3 topics that I want to see less of in crosswords overall. And do with this information what you will, constructors, but I want to see less of Allen Ginsberg, okay? He's like the NAMBLA supporting poet that everyone's obsessed with, and it's like, just because he wrote Hal doesn't mean we should put him in our crosswords. Coco Chanel, no more Coco Chanel, who's a Nazi, wake up, sheeple. And then also Mother Teresa, which showed up in like a handful of top like crosswords in the last week. We have to be critical of these people, okay? So no more, less of those 3.
Okay.
More of Tony Hawk, because that's something I've realized in the last
Week.
week that I want to see more Tony Hawk and skateboarding trivia in crosswords. More Cats references in crosswords because I am all for chaos. Grace is all for chaos. And, you know,
we're happy with what we had in 2020, but we aren't fully sated.
No, we're not. We need more. We need more. And then we need more TikTok references. I feel like there is a sad TikTok representation in crosswords. And I don't know why. It is a huge cultural phenomenon. There are millions of people on TikTok of all age ranges. There's incredible cultural moments happening on TikTok. One that I think is great crossword material is the fact that there's a huge group of people on TikTok that kind of, as a joke, started creating a Ratatouille musical, but is now on Broadway starring Wayne Brady and like other people. And it's like, we should put this
TikTok did this.
TikTok did this.
I will have to say, though, there is controversy around TikTok. You know,
what do you mean?
Some people say that they silent creators of color, that it's racist, yes. And, you know, things get taken off that are like inappropriate, but they're really not inappropriate, and that there's a bunch of other, you know, controversies around it. So it's not without fault, but it definitely is, you know, a huge part of our culture now, at least the younger generation. So
I agree. And TikTok is definitely controversial in the same way that, you know, Facebook and Instagram are controversial in that, like, people are being censored and on all of those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is really cool about TikTok is that it's like a really interesting political outlet for a lot of young people. And even though these accounts are getting banned, which I don't think they should be, and I don't think their account should be censored or anything like that, they exist. And people are constantly trying to share them and constantly trying to get them out of shadow ban. And people are learning information from these accounts. And these people are, you know, creators are trying to shake things up. And I think that's a great use of a social media platform. Is kind of take it by the horns and make it your own. But yeah. Oh, and one last thing that I'm excited for in 2021, Everdeen Mason is joining the New York Times as the first ever editorial director of games. Basically, they're going to be expanding puzzle and game offerings and developing like new audiences, which is exciting.
Ooh.
I believe Everdeen starts on the 4th of January. So I'm just excited to see what will happen at the New York Times now that we have a new, you know, a new
fresh face.
A new fresh face.
Very exciting stuff. Well, should we talk about our goals for 2021?
Yes, you go ahead.
Sleep 8 hours a night. No, just kidding. Crossword goals. Okay. So one of my goals is to do the harder New Yorker puzzles. Sometimes if I see one that's like all the way rated to the red, I'm like, nah, I'm not even going to bother with it. So push myself more to do the New Yorker one specifically. Interact with crossword Twitter more. I just don't go on Twitter that often, but I want to talk to people on there more. And then I also want to do more of Paolo Pasco's puzzles on his website Grids these days, because he does like kind of weird stuff. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I think he had one where every answer was Oreo. But yeah, the puzzles there are like weird and up my alley. I don't know why I don't do them more. I think it's because I like to do my puzzles on the iPad and I'm just making up excuses. But
no,
get an app. Get a Grids these days app and I will be on there.
I totally agree. I think in general, I want to do more indie puzzles. I think especially this year, we have been sticking to some of the more major publishers for puzzles because it's easier to access them. And then, I mean, the year has been crazy. So I have not done as many crosswords in 2020 than I did in, 2019. Grace and I would sit down at lunch and I'd print out 5 crosswords and we would just have 5 crosswords every day just sitting on the table and we would do them.
Mm-hmm.
And now I try and get 2 crosswords done a day if I can. But, the world is crazy and like I'm at home and I'm cleaning and I'm working and I got to take my dog out and I got to make dinner and, life gets ahead of me. But I want to do more indie crosswords like Paolo's puzzles and Christopher Adams and tons of other indie constructors out there. I want to do more of their puzzles because I think they're creating great content, the stuff that we're actually looking for that we're not really getting at the major publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to challenge myself and Grace to sign up for a crossword tournament and actually compete in it, even though we're going to lose.
I don't know. Maybe next year. Grace is like,
I don't know. It is next year, 2021, baby.
No, next year, 2022. I just don't want to subject myself to that type of embarrassment. I'm I try and keep my embarrassing times to a minimum if I can.
I do feel like it will be extremely embarrassing. But I also, looking at the tournament that we watched, Lollapuzzoola, even though there are like a huge group of people that are super, super smart and really good at crosswords, there are people that are closer to what our abilities are. So I'm wondering...
Don't insult those people this
No,
way.
I'm
like
not
that.
insulting them. I'm just saying that, like, I think we think that we're worse than we are.
Maybe. Well, we can do it as a team, so that makes me feel better.
Right, exactly.
All right, we'll discuss when the time comes.
That's just a challenge. It doesn't mean we have to do it, okay?
All right. Well, we'll see what happens this year, but should we get ahead into our first topics of the new year and flip the coin?
Let's flip the coin. I'm flipping the coin now. It's heads!
Yay!
So I'm the first to go in the new year. I don't know what this means, for our podcast, but it seems like it's good. It's good fate.
You think? I don't know. I think we would be luckier if I went first, but I guess we'll see.
I guess we'll see. See you this time next year, and we'll report back.
Yeah.
So, my topic comes from the December 27th New Yorker Holiday Crossword 2020 in TV by Wina Liu. 2 down. Future forecaster. And the answer is Oracle.
Ooh. I like that. I liked those 2020 puzzles that
They're
New
so
Yorker
good.
did. Yeah, those are fun.
They're great, and would recommend anybody out there. They do like 2020 year in TV, year in movies, year in tech and science, year in language. Lots of really cool stuff, and everything is from the previous year, so it's all relevant. Lots of good things to ring the new year in with. But yeah, so my clue, Oracle, comes from the TV puzzle. So we talked a little bit we have talked in the past about like different psychic abilities, different divination tools.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about Nostradamus, tarot, tea leaves.
Yes.
So we're into this kind of stuff. So I thought, why not start the new year with some future forecast vibes, right? Okay. What is an oracle? An oracle is a person who has the ability to see into the future and make predictions about things and like how they're going to turn out, right? And then because of those predictions, they can provide like guidance and counsel to people seeking information, right?
Mm-hmm.
The catch is that these people are not like acting solo. They're not just like Joe Schmo living like by the tree or living in a house down the street and they have these visions. No, they are not working solo. They are working like on behalf of the gods as inspired by the gods. So it's very much connected to religion or a religion that was practiced a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So being an oracle is considered a form of divination, which is like in its simplest form, the way people gain insights from the gods. Other types of divination would be like claromancy, so rolling dice to like see the future, or astrology, dream interpretation, scrying, feng shui, which Grace did a topic on, and then tarot, etc. And like all of these are very ritualistic and they're attached to religion in some way, if they're to be divination. Otherwise, they're just kind of like fortune telling, right?
Yes.
So back to oracles. The word oracle comes from the Latin orare, which means to speak. Makes sense because they're speaking truth. They're spitting rhymes or something.
I see what they did there.
Oh my God, the Latins, who am I? The people who spoke Latin were smart. The word was actually used to describe so the word is used to describe the actual person doing the predicting, but it's also used to describe the place where the person doing the speaking and predicting exists. So Grace is the Oracle of Chicago, but then you would also say, I'm going to the Oracle of Chicago as like a place as well.
Which is my apartment.
Which is her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So the Oracle of Chicago lives at the Oracle of Chicago, which is Grace's apartment.
Got it.
Okay. And it can either be, an oracle can either be a priest or a priestess, but women oracles are sometimes known as sibyls, which, if you're a Harry Potter fan, the reason why Sybil Trelawney is named Sybil Trelawney is because she's a seer, because she can, like, see. into the future. J.K. Rowling was so smart, right?
That's a little on the nose, but okay.
Yeah, right. And oracles have existed like throughout time and throughout history and throughout multiple cultures in one way or another. They might not be called oracles. They might be called something else, but they exist. Usually they exist wherever there has been some sort of like indigenous religion or some sort of pagan religion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about two famous ancient Greek oracles. And then I'll talk a little bit about some other oracles if we have time.
Okay.
We're going to start with the Oracle of Dodona, which is like the coolest friggin' name ever. Okay, so Dodona is located in the northwestern part of Greece in Epirus, in the valley of Mount Tamaros. So you can go to this place and you can see like this is where the Oracle of Dodona used to be. And it is actually the oldest Greek oracle, founded somewhere between 2000 BC and 1000 BC, which is crazy. And it remained an important religious site until the rise of Christianity, which was basically like the 3rd century CE.
Mm-hmm.
It was assumed that the Oracle of Dodona was originally dedicated to the mother goddess, so Mother Earth, essentially, named Dione. Dione is basically just another word for goddess. And they sometimes called this mother goddess Gaia, which is the mother of the earth in Greek mythology, which we've talked a little bit about Gaia in previous episodes. So, but over time, this oracle changed hands from being, for the mother goddess to being an oracle for Zeus, who is the king of the gods. The oracle was located in a forest of sacred oak trees, but there was one tree in particular that was, quote, the sacred oak, the one true tree, the big boy that would actually like help with the predictions, right? So pilgrims would come from all over to go to the Oracle of Dodona. They would visit the oracle to ask Zeus questions and look for guidance. Zeus would then answer these questions through rustling the leaves of the sacred tree. Tied to the branches of the tree were small bronze objects, so when the wind blew, it created a sort of wind chime effect that the priests and priestesses would basically interpret for the pilgrim to kind of help them with their question.
Sounds convenient.
Sounds very convenient. Also sounds really pretty.
Yes.
Right? Like an ancient sacred oak forest with like bronze shit hanging in the trees. Hey, that's kind of like how I would decorate my backyard, probably. So, come to my oracle. So, the priests and priestesses that maintained the oracle at Dodona were from a group called the Selli, and they slept on the ground and had unwashed feet so they could draw power directly from the earth. And this oracle was used mainly for private matters, which is in contrast to other oracles which were used for like larger scale things like war and politics. This one was more like, should I go home to see my wife? Should I marry John's down the street or whatever? So pilgrims would arrive and ask the priest or priestesses a question, and they would like write it on like a slate. They would show the priest or priestess, and they would answer yes or no, like a simple yes or no answer. They've actually found those slates that people would write on, and they have it in like a museum, which you can go see, which is kind of cool.
What kind of questions did they ask? Like, does
That's a great question.
Timmy like me?
I'm sure things like that were asked in Greek vernacular. So we're going to actually talk about who visited the oracle at Dodona and what they would have asked there. You know the Odyssey, written by Homer, right?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Okay, she's familiar. Odysseus, the main character, visited the oracle at Dodona to ask whether or not he should return home to Ithaca openly or in disguise. I couldn't find what the oracle told him, but we do know that Odysseus showed up in disguise. So he probably was like, should I show up in disguise? And the oracle was like, yes, because they answer yes or no. And so then he went home and he was in disguise. In Homer's Iliad, Achilles went and asked Zeus to help his lover, Patroclus, in his fight against Hector. Didn't really help. I think Patroclus died. And then this one is actually kind of cool. This is another myth one. Jason from, he's a Greek hero. He was the guy who was on the search for the Golden Fleece. He was told by Hera before he went out on his quest to go to Dodona and take a piece of the oak tree and use it as his prow of his ship, the Argo, which is his famous ship. And it is said that because he had this like sacred branch as the prow of his ship, the ship actually had prophetic abilities to kind of warn the sailors when they were getting close to enemies.
That's good to have in a ship. That's like installing radar in your car.
Wow, world's first radar.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, very nice. Back to like real life history. In 290 CE, King Prius of Epirus made Dodona the religious capital of his like domain, and he rebuilt a temple of Zeus there. He hosted festivals, other athletic games. He hosted music concerts. He actually had a theater built there, which they recently like discovered and like spruced up, or whatever it's called in archaeological terms. And
I'm sure that's the term. Yeah, people go to school to learn how to spruce up historic sites all the time.
They do. And then he built a wall around the oracle and the one sacred tree. But sadly, in 391 CE, an emperor named Theodosius, he closed all the pagan temples in the area and banned all pagan activities, and he even cut down the ancient holy tree at the Oracle of Dodona.
I feel like that's bad vibes.
Bad vibes all around.
Yeah.
And instead, he actually built a Christian basilica. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, hello, we could have used the Oracle tree in 2020.
We
Or
really
in 2019
Hello.
to stop 2020.
Yeah. So, though the Oracle of Dodona is the oldest oracle from ancient Greece, it is not the most well known. The title is held by the Oracle of Delphi. Are you familiar with the Oracle of Delphi?
Yes, the name sounds familiar.
Most people are, but they don't
yeah.
really know exactly what it is. It's actually kind of interesting. So, the Oracle of Delphi is located in southwestern Greece on Mount Parnassus, near the Gulf of Corinth. And the oracle is actually at the Delphic Holy Sanctuary, which is basically a big like plot of land that has like a bunch of religious, monuments and things like that. That's actually where the Temple of Apollo is located. And so inside the Temple of Apollo is where the Oracle of Delphi was.
Okay.
Founded in between 1600 BC and 1100 BC. It was originally, again, dedicated to Gaia, much like the Oracle of Dodona. But it switched to Apollo's temple and oracle somewhere between 800 and 700 BC. It is said that the reason it changed hands is because Apollo killed Gaia's child, Python. Yeah. And Python was a large snake living in the center of the earth at Delphi, and after Apollo killed Python, Apollo assumed control of the temple.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And so remember, it's the god who speaks through the people, right? So that is what the oracle is. So no longer is Gaia speaking through the oracle. Now it's Apollo. So things are changing around here, okay? There's actually a stone outside of the Temple of Apollo, and I think it's still there, called an omphalos, and it's like kind of dome-shaped, and it marks the place where Apollo killed Python. So if you're interested in that, you can go maybe
just go on over to Greece and check it out.
Check it out. Check it out. The Temple of Apollo and its oracle were maintained by high priestesses, which I think is really cool. They were women, and they were called Pythia. Like the main high priestess was called Pythia. The name Pythia was derived from a Greek word, Pythian, which means to rot. Basically, it was referring to the smell of decomposition of the body of Python after Apollo killed it.
Okay.
So, yum. It's like a nice, sweet smelling of decomposition. I love that for us. I love that for Apollo. So the Pythia, they were in charge of like maintaining the temple, and they were the oracle, right? So the Pythia would answer questions of pilgrims to kind of help them figure out their future.
So they also were able to talk through the oracle? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds sketchy.
So initially, the Pythia was a virgin because she was reserved for a union only with the god Apollo. Okay? So that's why she was like, had to be chaste and whatever. But according to a Greek historian, Diodorus Siculus, Icrates of Thessaly arrived at the oracle and saw the virgin priestess and, quote, became enamored of her because of her beauty and carried her away and violated her, and that the Delphinians, because of this deplorable occurrence, passed a law that in the future a virgin should no longer prophesy, but that an elderly woman of 50 would declare the oracles, and that she would be dressed in the costume of a virgin as a sort of reminder of the prophetess of olden times.
All right, I guess that's...
Makes sense.
It's weird, but it's what they had at the time to...
Right.
To deal with it.
That's all they could do. That's all they could do.
It's like, let's just switch her out with some old lady that no one wants to sleep with. It's like, that's not the root of the problem, people.
That's not the issue. And also, you know, if a man's horny enough, they'd probably violate her too. Anyway, so the Pythia are no longer virgins. I mean, they could be, but they're not like required to be a virgin, right? They're probably chosen like, you know, one Pythia dies and then the next one kind of assumes order. They think they were chosen from like an order of priestesses, right? And they could have been any woman. They could have been a married woman, a single woman, a widow. They could have been rich or poor. So anyone could have been picked. And then they kind of rose and assumed the role of Pythia. And once they did that, they gave up all familial relations and connections. And they even gave up their individual identity. And they assumed the identity of the Pythia. So you became like this oracle, like that's what you were. Initially, it was only women from prestigious families who could assume the role of Pythia. So that meant she had like a background of politics, history, arts, all sorts of things. But later on in the history of this oracle, anybody could join and it could be a peasant. And so it was interesting that it initially started off as a status thing and it eventually became not a status thing. So anybody. And it was also very normal for there to be 3 Pythia at a time, and they would work as a triad because the number 3 has like importance in ancient Greece.
People love the number 3.
They do. They really
Trinity.
do. So now we have the Pythia. We're at the temple. We want to get our oracle. We want to like figure out our future. Sad thing is, the Pythia is not always available. It's not like you can just show up whenever you want and be like, knock, knock, can you tell me my future?
No, you can't.
You can't. The temple was only open for the 9 warmest months of the year because apparently Apollo fled the temple during the winter months, so he wasn't there to kind of like possess the Pythia and be like, whatever, here's your future. And so during the months that they were open, any singular Pythia could only be consulted on one day of the month, and that process was extremely strenuous. So on the 7th day of the month, the Pythia would have to perform various purification acts, like fasting, bathing naked in a nearby stream, burning laurel leaves, and drinking holy water. Then a goat was sacrificed, and its organs were examined for prophetic signs before being burnt on an altar. So the smoke from the organs burning on the altar signified to the pilgrims and the townsfolk that the Pythia was open for business. And so everyone would get... Yeah. They're like, it's time! Exactly. And so people would literally line up, and you'd be given the opportunity to pay more money, or more alms, basically, to Apollo. And the more money you gave, the higher up in the line you could get, et cetera, et cetera.
It's all about money. Wait, so you're saying these women only worked 1 month? One day a month. 1 day a month for 9 months a year? That's pretty... I'd fast 1 day a month for that.
I'd bathe naked in a stream. Yeah, you sign me up. So, it was also said that, like, depending on how the goat behaved before you slaughtered it, might mean you would or wouldn't see somebody that day. So somebody could be standing in line for, like, 5 hours, and then the Pythia is like, well, the goat actually moved his feet funny, so I'm not going to see that person. And so you traveled like 3,000 miles and like, you're not going to get to see the Pythia.
The poor goat's like, oh, I get to go inside the temple today? Cool. Oh my God. What are you doing?
Right? The poor baby. He had no idea. Oh God. Yeah. So, I mean, you never knew what you're going to get. And so then you came on the 7th day of the month and the Pythia is not going to see you. So now you have to wait a whole nother month in Delphi before you can try again and hope that the goat doesn't move his feet funny.
Yeah.
Shaking my damn head. Anyway, okay. So then the Pythia would go into her like little secret chamber and she would sit on this tall stool. And then they would bring in the pilgrim who was trying to get an answer, right? So she's sitting on this tall stool. She's holding a bowl full of spring water, which she's gazing into. So think of like scrying, when you're scrying into like a bowl of water. And then in her other hand, she's holding laurel leaves. The pilgrim comes in and asks a question. And then it said that the Pythia received her prophetic abilities from fumes and vapors that rose out of the floor of the temple. And so these fumes had a drug-like effect on her, kind of pushing her into an ecstasy-infused state. And once in this state, she would recite her prediction in either pentameter or hexameter. So those are like, types of verse.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, that job is kind of hard. I see why they only do it one day a month.
And she's obviously very drugged out, and she's got to do this in hexameter or whatever else. And I'm like, are you kidding me? No, I can't even talk a normal sentence when I'm not drunk or high. So, what's really cool is that a lot of these prophecies were written down. So there's more than 500 surviving prophecies referring to the Oracle of Delphi. So that's really, really cool. That these things were actually happening and people were actually recording them and saving them. I liked that a lot.
So it's legit. There's real proof.
Too legit to quit. So who on earth was like coming to the Oracle of Delphi? The most famous consultant of the Oracle was Croesus, who was the king of Lydia, okay? And he faced a war with the Persians, and he asked the Oracle for advice. The Oracle said that if Croesus went to war, then a great then a great empire would surely fall. And so Croesus was like, hell yeah, let's go to war then. I'm going to beat this motherfucker. Turns out it was Croesus, or his empire, that actually fell because he lost, and the, empire of Lydia fell. And so it's kind of like you have to read in between the lines with the Pythia. She's not going to be 100% clear with you,
Well, what are you paying her for?
Technically, you're paying Apollo.
Well, what are you paying him for?
Right. I would like a little bit of clarity, please. Another consultation that was famous was when the Athenians and the Spartans consulted the Pythia before the Battle of Thermopylae. So you might not know the Battle of Thermopylae off, the cuff, right? But if you like weird, not necessarily historically accurate historical movies, 300 is about the Battle of Thermopylae. So it's basically when Sparta fought Xerxes. You had 300 soldiers versus 1,000,000 soldiers or something. That's not the correct numbers, but you get the idea.
Got it.
So basically, Xerxes, the son of Darius the Great, was plotting against Greece, and the Pythia told the Spartans that they would fall in battle to Xerxes. Here is her prophecy. Quote, "Hear your fate, O dwellers in Sparta of the wide spaces. Either your famed great town must be sacked by Perseus' son, or if that be not, the whole land of Lacedaemon shall mourn the death of a king of the house of Hercules. For not the strength of lions or of bulls shall hold him. Strength against strength, for he has the power of Zeus, and will not be checked until one of these two has consumed." And so every last Spartan who fought in the battle that the oracle foresaw died.
So she was right.
She was right. You got to listen to the Pythia, okay? You got to listen to her. What I think is really cool about the Pythia and the Delphic oracle in general is that they were, first of all, the most important oracle in Greece. So they had incredible influence. They were swaying wars of nation. What makes it even cooler is that they were women. It was male dominated. Greece was male dominated, right? But pilgrims from even far off nations were coming to the Oracle of Delphi to ask these women's advice on everything: politics, war, family, laws, personal issues, anything. And the oracle's powers were not questioned, ever. So if she was communing with the gods, so they were taking her word as law, and any inconsistencies were ignored. So these were some of the most, if not the most powerful women in ancient Greece.
Look at that, and I didn't even know about them.
It's really friggin' cool. They were really high while they were doing it, so okay.
That explains a lot, actually.
It really does. But yeah, that's not to say that a lot of her prophecies, or their prophecies, were worded ambiguously, right? To kind of cover the bases, as it were. Does this remind you of anyone, Grace? Anyone at all?
Nostradamus.
Grace talked about one of the most famous seers in, history, Nostradamus. Check it out. I don't have the episode. I should have written it down. But it's a good one.
It exists somewhere out there.
It's on there. It's on there. The internet, I mean. But, okay, hold on. Can we go back to the fumes and vapors and shit for a second? So what were the fumes that were supposedly coming out of the floor and making her, prophetic? There's this guy, Plutarch, who was a high priest at the Temple of Apollo. He said that the vapors came from the spring waters that flowed under the temple. Okay, but why is she acting so strangely? Is it because she's, being possessed by Apollo? Others suggest it was hallucinogenic gases like ethylene or methane. Okay, that's likely, right? But here's the kicker. The Pythia also chewed or inhaled the smoke of oleander flowers, which oleanders are toxic, okay? And like inhaling them or, engaging with them, they have similar effects of like epilepsy. So oleander would actually be burnt in braziers underneath the room where the Pythia performed. And they actually found this room. They didn't initially know that this room existed, but they found it later on. And they found that they found oleander extracts underneath this room. And so they're burning oleander under the room where she's being a prophet. And so she was probably just really freaking high the whole time. Also, Pythia had a notoriously short lifespan because for the short time that they were working, they were inhaling toxic fumes all day, every day.
That'll do it to you.
Oh, yeah. So, but if you want to go see where the Pythia performed, you can go actually visit the Temple of Apollo. The whole archaeological site of Delphi is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and something I hope you all get to visit when the world is back to normal.
One day, 2021, baby.
It's true. And I don't have enough time to talk about other oracles in other societies because we talked too much about Pythia. But if you're interested, find me on Instagram or Twitter, and I will definitely let you know some interesting things that I've learned.
Call her anytime. Her phone number is 78. So no, I actually know your number by heart. So
I'm waiting for your call. So do you want to be a Pythia with me?
Yeah, sure. Put it on the calendar. We'll do it after we do our puzzle.
Yeah, I'll get some oleander, and then we'll meet up.
Cool. My topic is from the Tuesday, December 29th New York Times by Matthew Trout, and it is 8 Down, Mother blank.
Teresa.
Mother Teresa. So you mentioned this earlier, something that you wanted to see less of, and I couldn't say anything because I knew it was going to be my topic. But let's just get right into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So Mother Teresa, I'm going to talk about her personal life a little bit first before I really get into the takedown. Okay, so she was born in 1910 in Skopje, Ottoman Empire, which is now the capital of Macedonia. And her original name is the Albanian version of Agnes. So it's like Anjas. I don't know. I don't speak Albanian, as should not be a surprise to anyone. She was born on August 26th, which is Will Short's birthday, in case you're wondering. And she was baptized the day after her birthday on August 27th. So she actually considers August 27th to be her true birthday, which I'm talking about this because that's also my birthday. And so we're all Virgos, and that's that. Me, Will Shorts, and Mother Teresa. But so is Beyonce, so it's fine.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All right, so she was her parents' youngest child. I couldn't figure out she for sure had an older sister, potentially more. Her father was an entrepreneur, but was also involved in politics, and he died when she was only 8 years old. And some accounts speculate that he could have been poisoned by a political rival, but nothing has been proven. Okay. According to a biography by Joan Graf Clucas, Teresa was fascinated, or Agnes at the time, was fascinated by missionaries at an early age, particularly stories of their service in Bengal in South Asia. Her congregation made an annual pilgrimage to the Church of the Black Madonna in Letnica in Poland, and it was on one of those pilgrimages at the age of 12 that Agnes realized her call to religious life. So, when she turned 18, she was off to the races, and she joined the Sisters of Loreto at Loreto Abbey in Rathfarnham, Ireland, to learn English with the intent of becoming a missionary in India. Okay. She was, by all accounts, still a kid. I mean, I guess it was back in the day, so people were more mature then. She was 18 when she decided to do this.
We talked about this, I think, maybe not on this podcast, but we talked about your frontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 25. And you make... and that, developing that cortex is what helps you stop making rash decisions or impulsive decisions. So Do with that information what you will.
Yes, so little 18-year-old Agnes, it's thought that after she left home and went to Ireland that she never saw her mother or her siblings again.
Damn.
A year later, she traveled to Darjeeling, India, for her novitiate period, which is the period before a nun takes her final vows. And so she took her final vows in 1931, or her first vows, in 1931, at the age of 21. And she chose to be named after Teresa de Lisieux, who was the patron saint of missionaries. But a nun in the convent already had that name, had Teresa with a TH. So she took the Spanish version of the name, Teresa, which doesn't have an H, and that's why she is Mother Teresa with no H, in case you're wondering. It's because another nun got it before her.
And she was just not having it.
Yeah, she definitely wanted to be named after the patron saint of missionaries. So she went to Calcutta, where she was assigned to teach at St. Mary's High School for Girls. She learned Bengali and Hindi fluently, according to some accounts. According to other accounts, she did not know those languages fluently. In 1937, she took her final vows and went from Sister Teresa to Mother Teresa, as we know her today. In 1944, she became the school's principal, but then in 1946, everything changed. Story has it that she was riding on a train from Calcutta to a Himalayan foothill for a retreat when she claims she received a calling from God to abandon her work as a teacher and to work in the slums of Calcutta. After getting permission to leave her current position, which took like a year because, you can't just like change your job when you're a nun. You have to get like jump through a bunch of hoops. So hoops. So once she got permission to leave her position, she donned her blue and white sari, which is what she is, known for wearing now. If you look at any picture of her, she's wearing the white with the 2 blue stripes in the front. And then she would wear that sari for the rest of her life. She took 6 months of basic medical training. Okay, is that enough? I would argue no. And then she headed into the Calcutta slums. She began an open-air school and created a home for the dying in a dilapidated building that was donated by the government. And this is kind of important later.
Okay.
So in 1950, the Missionaries of Charity was officially created by the Catholic Church. And with a giant influx of donations in the 50s and 60s, they were able to establish a leper colony, an orphanage, a nursing home, family clinics, and a string of mobile health clinics. In 1985, she even opened the Gift of Love in the USA to care for those infected with HIV or AIDS. By 1997, the Missionaries of Charity had 4,000 members, not including volunteers, with 610 foundations in 123 countries around the world. She was awarded the Jewel of India, which is the highest honor bestowed on Indian civilians. And in 1979, she won the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her work for, quote, in bringing help to suffering humanity. In 2016, Pope Francis canonized her as a saint in the Catholic Church. And today, she sits in the same sphere with Dalai Lama and Gandhi, who have their own issues, or there's other issues there. But she is revered for her selfless commitment to helping those in need. But is this adoration deserved? The reverence surrounding Mother Teresa is not without controversy, and I am going to kind of go into what her critics say.
Okay.
And of course, this is something I've talked about many times, missionaries. I want to give a shout out to No White Saviors. They have an Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're an organization. We have talked about them before. They talk a lot about missionary work and how it is kind of a byproduct of white supremacy. And even if intention is good, if the overall outcome ends up hurting people and hurting communities and perpetuating this image of brown communities needing white people to go in and help them, then it's not really worth it. But
right, then it's an issue.
Yes. So, and I also want to say this is like a huge topic, and there are so many. You can watch documentaries, you can read books. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. So I'm going to scrape the surface. I hope that at least this helps some people who may not know to like look at things a little differently, or, you can do your own research. There's a documentary that I want to watch that the BBC made called Hell's Angel. And the title alone. Okay. So Vijay Prashad is an Indian historian, and he says about Mother Teresa, quote, he says that she is, quote, the quintessential image of the white woman in the colonies, working to save the dark bodies from their own temptations and failures. End quote. So that basically sums it up. So there have been numerous accounts of unhygienic practices and squalor found at Mother Teresa's medical centers. Hemley Gonzalez, a noted humanitarian worker in India, briefly volunteered at one of the Missionaries of Charity's location and said, quote, "Workers washed needles under tap water and then reused them. Medicine and other vital items were stored for months on end, expiring, and still applied sporadically to patients. Volunteers with little or no training carried out dangerous work on patients with highly contagious cases of tuberculosis and other life-threatening illnesses. The individuals who operated the charity refused to accept and implement medical equipment and machinery that would have safely automated processes and saved lives." So doctors in India began calling her homes homes of the dying, which was fitting as they had about a 40% mortality rate. Patients were often given the equivalent of aspirin to help with their pain. And to quote Mother Teresa, quote, "There is something beautiful in seeing the poor accept their lot, to suffer it like Christ's passion. The world gains much from their suffering."
I do know that quote.
Yes.
I know that quote.
And this is what's called poverty porn. And there's nothing good about suffering. And it should be noted that towards the end of her life, Mother Teresa had a lot of heart issues. And yes, she did die in her room in Calcutta, but for years previously, she received the best of the best medical treatment in the USA. So she liked when other people suffered.
But not herself,
not for her.
obviously.
Yes. Although I will say some of her supporters say that she was forced to receive better medical treatment against her will. Does that excuse it? I don't know. Is that even true? I don't know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no surprise that Mother Teresa was anti-abortion, anti-birth control, anti-divorce, as she was a staunch Catholic. In her speech for accepting her Nobel Prize, she said, quote, "To me, the nations with legalized abortion are the poorest nations. The greatest destroyer of peace today is the crime against the innocent unborn child." So this is very interesting to me because we know that unwanted pregnancies or pregnancies to unprepared parents are one of the leading causes of poverty and the continuation of poverty through generations. Lakshmi Puri, who is an assistant secretary general and deputy executive director of UN Women, wrote an article about the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the article talks about the link of women's help and support and poverty. So again, I'm quoting a lot of things because these people obviously put it better than I ever could.
No,
so,
I think you're doing great. This is so helpful.
Quote, "Poverty eradication is about enabling women to have income, security, sustainable livelihoods, access to decent work, and full and productive employment. It is about the provision of infrastructure and social protection, which otherwise creates and perpetuates poverty for women and girls and deprives them of other opportunities. Okay, most importantly, care work for the family and the community is essential to human life and to the social and economic foundations of all economies." So basically, if women don't get healthcare and don't get the resources to kind of take charge of their healthcare surrounding like having babies, that the economy is going to suffer, and the society as a whole will not be able to get out of poverty if women, keep basically having pregnancies that they don't have the resources to deal with. So
right, and they don't have there's not a system in place to help women who don't have the resources. Do you know what I mean? So it's
exactly,
we're going to force you to have a baby, but we're not going to give you any resources once you have the baby.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it's just pick a side. If you want to be anti-abortion, but then it's offering nothing to stop people from getting pregnant, what are you doing then? So the question is, what does Mother Teresa really care about? Does she just care about people suffering? Does she want to end poverty? Some of her supporters say that she never said she was a social worker. She's not a politician. She never said that she's out here to solve poverty. She just wants to create a place where dead people can die in dignity and comfort. Were they really dying in dignity and comfort? Some accounts say no, they weren't. But also, is that really enough or worth being, adored for?
Canonized.
Yes. But also, she claims that she is not like a politician. However, she spent many time traveling to a bunch of different countries talking about anti-abortion, talking about how women shouldn't get divorced, talking about how, abstinence only teaching should be what was used. So I kind of think that she was political then.
Yes, that is political.
In a way, she was keeping these communities in poverty and then exploiting her helping poverty and giving up all earthly desires to live in poverty, supposedly with these people, although she was able to get more medical help. But whose benefit is that really for? Is it really her fault? She was young. Was the Catholic Church using her as a cog they pushed this image of her to, to get the recognition. And she did get recognition from secular organizations like the Nobel Prize people. So I don't know. It's complicated. But let's talk about divorce. She was very anti-divorce. However, when it came to her rich white friend, Princess Diana, she openly supported her after Princess Diana's divorce from Prince Charles. So
that's interesting.
What's that about? Yeah. Also, despite standing on her high moral ground, she rubbed elbows with some questionable people, including Haitian dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier, who was charged with crimes against humanity for his abuse of fellow Haitians, and that's putting it lightly. I mean, he was absolutely terrible if you don't know about him, also known as Baby Doc, I believe. But regarding the Duvalier family, Mother Teresa said they were, quote, full of love. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
She also received $1.45 million in donations from her friend Charles Keating, and this name didn't ring a bell to me, but other people who are more informed might know. Basically, in the 80s, there was like this huge savings and loans crisis that cost American taxpayers billions of dollars, and Charles Keating was behind it. So he eventually got charged for all this fraud. But she took money from him. And not to mention, $1.45 million is a lot of money. How much money does Missionaries of Charity raise, do you think? Well,
that's a great question.
We will never know for sure, because even though Indian law requires charitable organizations to publish their accounts, Missionaries of Charities refuses to, and they are kind of under the protection of the Vatican, and like many, I don't know the laws in other countries, but in the United States, religious institutions don't have to follow the same rules as other nonprofit organizations. So,
oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the German magazine Stern estimated that only 7% of the millions of dollars Teresa received was used for charity. They were actually able to look at charities in England, one of the only countries where the sisters allowed people to take a brief glance at their books. And let's see, they estimated that the order took in $5.3 million in 1991, and their expenses were $360,000. That's less than 7%. So where's this money going?
The Vatican.
Yeah. Well, most of the buildings they use are donated. Like I said, her first building was donated by the government. The people who run the charities are all nuns, so they're essentially working for free. And the facilities are never updated. You can read accounts of children, orphanages, sleeping in the same beds, no medical equipment, expired medication. Just, yeah. To put in perspective, Missionaries of Charity is $1 billion business, and they have more money than UNICEF, but nobody knows where it goes. There have been accounts by former nuns who say that all the money is sent to the Vatican, even when it's donated for a specific crisis, like a flood. People will send money like, oh, Missionaries of Charity for the flood in Ethiopia. And it doesn't. They cash the checks and they don't know where it goes. To me, I think that's the most egregious part of it all. We can argue about the ethics of the other stuff and what she was really there to do. But the fact that the money, there's no transparency where the money is going.
Is anybody really surprised though?
No. Yeah. I'm not. But that's, we're talking billions of dollars. Right. They would be able to free everyone from the slums in Calcutta with that type of money.
Right. But that doesn't seem to be their goal here.
No. Well, then it kind of gives them nothing to do, right?
Right.
They need charity cases as they
exactly
for them in their world. All right. And then many of her critics say that she would convert people to Catholicism on their deathbeds, even though she was working in places where people weren't Catholic. So some nuns were taught to baptize people without them knowing by, having holy water on a rag and putting them on their forehead. Now, I don't know if this is true. This is something that I saw a lot in my research. It came up a bunch, but I couldn't find any statistics or, that's just kind of word of mouth. Some people say that happened. Some, people who actually live in Calcutta say that that's what was going on. So believe that if you want to or not. I would not be surprised if that what was going on there. Some people say there were accounts saying that she gave the option of, letting people have their final rites, which is like a sacrament in Catholicism, but it was their option to do it if they wanted to or not. I don't know. I don't know what to believe. Okay. But I'm going to end this portion with a quote from from an article titled Mother Teresa Was No Saint on HuffPost.com, written by Krithika Verriger. And it's a long quote, but she says, Mother Teresa's image is a relic of white Western supremacy. Her glorification comes at the expense of the Indian psyche, and of a billion Indians in diaspora who were force-fed the notion that it's different and better when white people help us, who learned that forced conversion is no big deal, who grew up learning the egregious fact that one of the 5 Indian Nobel laureates was a woman who let sick people die. Poverty is not beautiful, it's terrible. Mother Teresa will be the patron saint of white people on gap years, but not of any actual brown person.
Hello, preach it.
So, yes. Now, some listeners might be like, Grace, what have you done for the slums of Calcutta? You're up here on your high horse talking about Mother Teresa. I will say, you got me there. But if there's anything I learned from No White Saviors, the best, well, okay, this is very complicated, but if you want to, like if you're looking to see how maybe you could help Calcutta, which, by the way, Calcutta is, yes, they have slums, but it's also, a beautiful city. There's something really damaging about the image that a lot of these organizations push about certain countries that, how often when you were a kid did you hear, like, oh, are you going to eat that? They're starving kids in Africa.
Right.
That image, those commercials with that guy with white hair and the, poor African children who even knows if they were consented or if they couldn't consent. They were babies,
right,
to be put on these commercials to raise money, whatever. Right. And it's like, that's just a small portion of those countries, but you're perpetuating this image that these countries, and first of all, Africa is like a huge continent with,
right. That's the problem too, is like,
yeah.
Kids are starving in Africa. And it's like, do you know how many countries there are in Africa? And you know how many like thriving populaces and cities that exist there? And you're just going to, first of all, water everything down to this one impoverished looking child's picture and say like, donate money. It's so problematic.
Especially when we live in a country where people die because they don't have health insurance, so they can't get the health care that they need.
Right, exactly.
Anyways.
Isn't that so funny? Continue.
Yeah, funny. No, so it's all a big mess, but basically you should look into local charities. I guarantee you in any of these countries, there are local charities that are trying to, help their own communities. And instead of paying a lot of money to go on a volunteerism trip and build a house or offer medical care when you have 6 months of medical training, whatever that means to Mother Teresa, you're better off just giving your money to an organization that already knows what they're doing and knows what the community needs and is part of the community. I actually quoted Hemley Gonzalez earlier. He was the one who went on the volunteer trip earlier and said that everything was bad. He created an organization called responsibilityfoundation.org. And I sent them a message on Facebook being like, how many of your higher up people are actual local Indians? And he hasn't responded to me yet, but they are secular and they are fully transparent with where all their donations go. But I'm going to post something on Twitter, or maybe I'll link it in the description of this episode. It has a list of other India organizations. Missionaries of Charity is on there, but it's all the way at the bottom of the list. And some of the other ones, I was looking through them, they do seem like they're head by local people. So I will post that. But anyways, that's just my view on Mother Teresa. And I believe I said a couple episodes ago, I said something like, well, I'm no Mother Teresa. That's just ingrained. That's the idiom, basically. Right. It's synonymous with being like this saint. Now she actually is a saint, but is she really?
Right. No, I think you prefaced it really well. Obviously, this is a very complicated and very deep subject that we're just, scratching the top of the surface on. But what you said is really, it's important. It makes you think critically about the people that you revere in your life. Mm-hmm. People are people. Okay. That means nobody is perfect. Everybody has flaws. Motivation. Somebody might be motivated by goodwill in their heart, but the things that they're doing are actually causing people harm. And that's what you have to look at. It's you might be the nicest person in the entire world, but an action that you take could hurt somebody. And that means you've done something wrong and you need to kind of atone for that. And you need to be recognized for not being a perfect person. So just think critically about the people that we're told and force-fed to believe are these,
altruistic, untouchable people. Yeah. As they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And yeah, That's true. Intention doesn't really matter when you're hurting people, especially when it's people that you kind of have no business trying to go into their communities and being like, I'm going to save you. It's like,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
not even that's not your people. But anyways, that's Mother Teresa. Hopefully, I think it's okay to see her in trivia depending on how she's clued. So
Agreed.
I don't want to see her clued as being like this, perfect person.
Right. I think one of the clues recently was like winner of a Nobel Prize something or other, and it's like,
Yeah.
it
Which
is Mother
is
Teresa.
technically
It's
true.
true. But I don't know. I feel like it perpetuates an idea that she is, like you said, altruistic, untouchable. Like she saved so many people's lives. And it's like, can we actually look at this more critically? Because it's frustrating to see like a white person just get away with X, Y, and Z when we could actually be revering people from their original communities, doing things in their original communities and helping those people.
So that's that. That's a good way to start off the year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So Grace and I are going to become Pythias, and we'll see you at the Oracle of Delphi.
Yeah. I guess so. All right. Well, until then, you can find us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at the Good Evening Girls.
Or TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
It's true. And another shout out, definitely follow No White Saviors, like Grace mentioned. They're an incredible organization with lots of information about this exact topic that we just talked about.
Yeah, they are based in Africa, but I mean, they talk about missionary work in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Check it out.
Check them out.
And we wish you all a beautiful 2021.
Yes.
As beautiful as it can be. Am I right?
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.